Hi, it's Jan Beta again, and today I have my VC20, which is the German version of the VIC-20, here again. And I haven't done much with this yet, because it came in its original state and I tested it, I made a little video, and it works fine, and I played some games, and then I basically put it away, because I didn't dare to let this run for any time longer than a couple of minutes, because I'm afraid that the ICs that are getting quite rare, because this is such an old computer, would burn or overheat and then fail. It's pretty hard to get them, and yeah, I basically don't want to risk this. I made a little video like this for the Commodore 64 where I future-proofed it. I will link that in again. And I'm gonna do the same to the VC20 in this video. So I'm gonna apply some heat sinks, I'm gonna change all the capacitors in there, and basically do some maintenance work. Yeah, this is a pretty basic video and maybe pretty boring, but I haven't seen many videos on the VC20 or the VIC-20 that is concerning heat and stuff. So I thought I'd make one, and maybe it helps some of these machines survive longer. So let's get it on. So this opens just the same as the Commodore 64. So you remove these 3 screws and you turn it back around, and you can basically lift this up and look under the hood. Be very careful with these hooks on the back there. Can easily break off there. Take it apart and put away the keyboard to the side so it won't be damaged. And then we have to remove the circuit board, which also has a couple of screws on there. Oh, and I should probably, while I have it here, put on my anti-static wrist wrap here. Wrist strap? Wrist strap. Anti-static wrist strap, what word? To prevent any of the ICs getting zapped before I can heat sink them. So there are some little screws here. It's just about the same as with the Commodore 64. There are 2 screws that hold this bracket here in place where the joystick port is and stuff like that. Whatever that cable is, it runs from the, I think it's the user port, all over to here. So yeah, I don't exactly know what that is. It's some kind of dodgy thing probably. So there we go. Can take it all out. I think I'm gonna remove the shielding paper here because it's totally bad for airflow, and it's probably the reason why there's so much heat building up in the VIC-20s. And here's our assembly number 250403, 1982. This is the short, the second revision. Basically there are 2 revisions of these boards. One is a bit longer and fills up the whole case, and this is the more recent model that's a bit shorter and some things are optimized and stuff. So, and it also uses the DIN power plug as opposed to the 2-prong power plug, which only provided 9 volts AC to the whole computer, and the 5 volts that the ICs need were then produced by little 7805 on the circuit board. Whereas with this model, the 5 volts come from the power brick, which is the same one that the Commodore 64 uses. So this is a bit more modern, and it's less heat building up here inside the case because the 7805, which produces quite a lot of heat, is not in here, but in the power brick. So I'm gonna put some new electrolytic caps in. I think there's also one in here. I'm gonna put this lid here away anyway, because yeah, that's the VIC 1, or just the VIC in here, the predecessor to the Commodore 64, VIC 2 of course, which is the graphics chips, and that is probably the chip that produces the most heat in this computer, so that definitely needs some heat sinking, and we're gonna take this away because this is just an RF shield to probably shield the outside world from the RF that this produces. So I have the desoldering station heating up here to replace some caps. So I'm not going to say a lot about this. I said a lot about this in the Commodore 64 version of this video. I'm only saying that you need the same capacitance, which is the microfarads rating on the cap. You have to get the polarity right. There are polarity markings on the board normally. I don't know if these markings are correct on the VC20 board here, but I guess so. Most of the Commodore 64 boards have correct markings on the board for the polarity. And yeah, you have to use the same capacitance, and you can use the same or a higher voltage, whereas a higher voltage is better as long as the cap fits in there physically, because the size varies a bit, but you won't have any problem on this board, I think, because there's a lot of space basically. A bigger voltage rating is good because the caps will last longer with bigger voltage ratings basically. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna recap this, and I'm gonna soldering iron and the desoldering iron in place here, and yeah, I'm basically going to stop talking now and just do it. So I think that about concludes the recapping of this board. And now we are going to apply some heat sinks, just like we did with the Commodore 64. And I think the chips that are that I want to heatsink are the VIC, of course, and the kernel ROM, which are the chips that get the hottest in the VIC. So I am going to use these. Let's get them out. I'm going to use these heat sinks here. Oh, this one has already lost the pad. They have sticky pads on them that are quite good. They are 3M double-sided tape, so I think if you don't rattle these machines around too much, they're gonna survive quite a long time. And yeah, these are, I think, 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. So they fit perfectly on these ICs. And I am basically going to put 3 on the VIC, like I did with the Commodore 64 VIC, and I'm gonna put 1 or 2 on the kernel. This gets really hot. I don't know why, but it does in the VIC-20s. So it's not this VIC-20, it's the VIC-20s in general that the kernel gets very hot on. I'm basically going to apply some isopropanol to clean them, and then put some heat sinks on there. So, and I have actually turned the board around because you can read the chip. No, actually I can reach it better if it's this way around. So there is the most important part to put heat sinks on is the dead center of the chips, because there's the die where all the electronics inside are. The rest is basically just wires going to the pins. So the center of the chip produces all the heat, and they are made from some kind of epoxy, I think, so it dissipates some heat. So the whole chip gets warm, but it gets hottest in the middle. So I'll put one here. I quite like these heat sinks. They have fins that actually protrude quite a bit, so that's not the worst thing to have if you don't have much airflow, like in these old computer cases here. So, okay, pressing it down, so that doesn't look too bad. It's a bit, yeah, looks a bit human, so I tend to say, yeah, but it's alright. I think it will do the job. Okay, so I am going to put one on the kernel too. And the center of the chip here. And I'm gonna press it down for a bit. Yeah, that's not going anywhere. Okay, so that's about it. I want to turn this on and try A, if it still works, and B, if any of the other chips get hot and need some heat sinking. Okay, so let's see if this still works. Yes, it does. And if I'm not mistaken, the picture quality looks it's a bit crisper and sharper now. Because of the recap, which would make sense. Let's load the file browser. I put my SD to IEC in here, which works the same on the Commodore 64 and the VC20, of course, because they have the same floppy serial. It's a serial port. They have the same IEC serial port. So you can use Commodore 64 floppies on the VIC-20. And I have quite a collection of games for the unexpanded model on here. Grid Runner? No, Grid Runner. So let's start Grid Runner, which is by Jeff Minter of Llamasoft. Oh, he later became Llamasoft. Obviously, he was JCM back in '82, and yeah, he's quite a nice guy who made a whole lot of very nice games for the VIC-20, for the Commodore 64, for the Spectrum, and basically for all the lovely machines back in the day. And he continues to make games. He recently released a PS4 game, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Polybios, which is it looks pretty nice, but I'm not into modern gaming that much, and I don't have any modern consoles, mostly because they are... Wow, this is pretty fast for a VIC-20 game. And I was never good at Grid Runner. I played the Commodore 64 version, basically. But, wow. This is basically a Centipede, but it's pretty... on a much higher level than Centipede. There's so much more happening there. Wow, but this is pretty well done. Although you can tell that it just uses characters, because the VIC-20 didn't have hardware sprites. Which was one of the great advantages of the Commodore 64, that the VIC-2 chip had the capability to use hardware sprites, which made games possible that were not possible on the VIC-20. Or it was easier to achieve, to make stuff possible at least. So yeah, this seems to be a working machine. I guess... Whoa, got me again. I guess I'll check some temperatures after a while. I'm gonna play with it a while, I think, and then see if the chips get any hot. Okay, let's open this up. And I hope it's not that easy, but yeah, this definitely gets hot. The processor not so much. So the kernel definitely gets hot, and the VIC, but the other ones are pretty cool, really. So I think I'll leave it at that for the heat sinking. Here's something that got demanded quite a bit. Testing the old caps, if they really are bad or if they are alright or whatever. I'm using my Atlas ESR 70, which is a very, very nice tool. It's pretty expensive, but you can basically test capacitors in circuit, and you can test the ESR and the capacitance. And it has sound, and has a little bing bing if it's an alright cap. It's actually a bigger capacity than it's supposed to have. It's nice. And quite a low ESR. Basically you go and touch these and it tests them. This is only one bing, that means the ESR, yeah, not that great, but alright. And it also has an lidum sound for leaky caps, I think. And that's a bad one. So this one, it's the 1 microfarad one, has 16.4 ohms resistance, which is ESR, which is series resistance, which is quite high for such a small capacitor. That's why it says dong. So one was the ESR was out of bounds there. The other ones were alright, I guess. But I always think it's better to replace capacitors because they always get bad over time. No capacitor, electrolytic cap lasts forever. So if you want the computer to last forever, you should replace the caps sometime. Especially if they are made in the 80s and are quite old. They last a couple of decades and then they dry out, and in the worst case, they short out the circuit, or they cause all sorts of intermittent faults and weird behavior in circuits. So better be safe and replace them like I did. There's a lot of discussion always about this, but I tend to replace them rather than keep 30 years old or 40 years old caps in there and hope for the best. So I'm going to replace them with quality ones, good brand ones. I'm using Panasonic mostly. And be safe, basically, for a couple of decades again. Yeah, so I guess that's about it. That's what I have done to be able to use this, really, or to dare to use this without fearing it will fail any moment. So maybe this is useful to someone. Maybe you do the same to your VIC-20 to make it run cooler, which will definitely make it live longer. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope this was helpful to you. If you want to give me some support, you can do so on my Patreon, which is linked in all over the place. There is a little PayPal donate button. You can donate money to me. When you click on my little logo here, you get to my channel page, and there is a PayPal button in the header. And yeah, basically you can just give this a thumbs up, or maybe a thumbs down if you didn't like it. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. I'm Beta. See you next time. Bye.